Hello everyone, I'm Henry Mueller and I'm working with the lovely Tierney Smith, and here is Mapp versus Ohio, the 1961 Supreme Court case. So the context for this case was that in Cleveland, Ohio, Dory Mapp's house was broken into by the police, who didn't have a search warrant. Their justification was that Mapp was harboring a suspected bomber, but they didn't find any evidence of this. Instead, the police found explicit photos in Mapp's basement. Dory Mapp was convicted by the Ohio State Court, but argued that her Fourth Amendment rights were violated and appealed the decision. In state courts, evidence that was seized unlawfully was allowed.
So the past cases that provide context for this are Weeks versus US, in which Justice Clark argued that the Fourth Amendment strictly implies that the use of evidence obtained by violating the amendment is unconstitutional. So that was the first case to establish the federal exclusionary rule, which prevents evidence collected in violation of the defendant's constitutional rights from being used in a court of law. Next was Wolf versus Colorado, which recognized the right to privacy as incorporated, but it didn't recognize the federal exclusionary rule as incorporated. And then Elkins versus US reestablished the federal exclusionary rule as incorporated. So what you're seeing is the precedent of the federal exclusionary rule being incorporated keeps switching from being overturned and reestablished.
Right. Okay, so the constitutional question here is, did the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures apply to U.S. states? And furthermore, could evidence that was obtained unconstitutionally be used in state criminal prosecutions?
So there are two different arguments. For Mapp, who is the appellant, since the police possessed no search warrant for her property, incriminating evidence should be thrown out and her conviction should be overturned. And also the Fourth Amendment limits the actions of state and local law enforcement. And since this is incorporated, the Supreme Court would have jurisdiction over it. And then for Ohio, the appellee, the argument is that the 14th Amendment does not invalidate evidence obtained through unreasonable search and seizure. The 14th Amendment does not guarantee Fourth Amendment protections in court, and under the 10th Amendment, the state of Ohio has the right to operate its own court system separate from the U.S.
So the majority opinion here was, this court has not hesitated to enforce as strictly against the states as it does against the federal government the rights of free speech and the right of free press, the rights to notice and to a fair public trial, including, as it does, the right not to be convicted by use of a coerced confession. And also, why should not the same rule apply to what is a tantamount to coerced testimony by way of unconstitutional seizure of goods, papers, effects, documents, etc.? And moreover,
And then Justice Clark said that only last year in Elkins, which was one of the previous court cases, the court recognized that the purpose of the exclusionary rule is to compel respect for the constitutional guarantee in the only effectively available way, by removing the incentive to disregard it. And in either sphere, state or federal, no man is to be convicted on unconstitutional evidence. The voting blocks were Whitaker, Frankfurter, and Harlan dissented. Justice Clark wrote the majority opinion, and he was joined by Warren, Douglas, and Brennan. Black and Douglas also filed a separate concurring opinion, and Justice Stewart concurred solely on free speech grounds.
and the short-term impact of the holding was the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures was incorporated into the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause to apply to the states. So now states were subject to the exclusionary rule we have mentioned in this video. The long-term impact is the 14th Amendment's power over the states was strengthened, and it continued the trend of selective incorporation we're learning about in this class. And the stare decisis set precedent for future case decisions on the national and state level, because now states have to consider the exclusionary rule when it comes to evidence. So the concepts of the case were it favored national government over the states because states' rights were being infringed on because they have to now consider the exclusionary rule, and it upheld the precedent or the stare decisis of incorporation of the exclusionary rule previously established in Elkins and Weeks. And it's judicial restraint because it's confirming past Supreme Court decisions. And is also loose constructionism because it applies the Bill of Rights to the states, and that's kind of loose because the Bill of Rights didn't apply to the states in its writing.
Yeah, and it protects the majority because it ensures no violation to people's Fourth Amendment protections. And it favors liberty because it prioritizes the right of privacy and property.
Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks
This has been a
for
fun one.
watching. Bring a warrant.
Bye.